We are back today. We are talking AFL Fantasy 2025. What did we learn from last year? Spoiler alert, it wasn't much. And we're going to preview all the things that we're going to get ourselves ready for this new season. Let's go!
Hodge has done it from nowhere. Busting the goal from inside the 30. Sheed from the boundary. Dusty.
G'day and welcome and subscribe to the Ball Boys AFL Fantasy Podcast. We are talking AFL Fantasy for 2025 and Happy New Year, Merry Christmas to everyone out there who was watching in the new year, which is when this is going to be coming up. But we're back. First content, first piece of, podcasting for 2025. And we've got some new equipment, we've got some new toys, and obviously we're going to be a bit rusty. Although, let's be honest, we weren't a finely oiled machine. I am Mitch Casey, and I'm joined by Luke Robertson, as always. How are you, mate?
Good, mate. You dragged me back in, kicking and screaming. You lured me in with comfortable chairs this year.
Yeah, we're sitting around in comfort. We can pivot.
We could do this. We were sitting on death traps all of last year, to be quite honest.
Yes.
There was every chance
Our
that we were...
posture was horrible.
Yeah, we're going to fall through those things. So we've got lumbar support here. You've also got...
Mike.
You compensating for something over there? That thing's enormous. We had to swap sides just to get that thing in the shot,
Well,
mate.
no, we had to swap sides so I could display this number here. Well, actually, no, that doesn't make sense because I had to turn my hat backwards. But anyway, the number 16's here.
Congratulations,
And,
mate.
Yes, we're back in business.
You're not wearing that every podcast, are you? You get one podcast today.
Absolutely, I'm wearing this every podcast. We are milking this to the very death. And yeah, we're going to talk about some AFL fantasy. It's
man.
It's been a minute. A lot of podcasts are out at the moment.
What, do people not understand that it's 2024? I'm telling you, I thought I'd just maybe wait another 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 months before putting my team in. It's too early. What have you got me back here for?
Well, everyone's excited. Everyone's keen. It is actually a shorter preseason than it ever has been. I think the first game is very early on. It's the first week of March this year. Actually, yeah, the very first week of March. It might have been like the 1st of March that the opening round begins. And then round 1 kicks off very early. So I think we've got a week fewer than we have ever before. Some of the traders, they started their podcast a week early. But officially January 1 is when our preseason starts. And we're gonna spend the most of today's episode talking about things that we've learned from 2024, where can we improve, and then also previewing the 2025 season. And we'll get into, I guess, the more specifics in future podcasts as well. So why don't we kick off from 2024? We did do a podcast at the end of last season, but I'm sure a lot of you tuned out by then.
Yeah, I certainly did. And I was physically present.
As a few of us did. So we want to go through, I guess, collectively, what did we learn from 2024? Some things that we can make ourselves better in this season based on last year's results. Well, I'll let you lead it off.
Yeah, I mean, we've tried to condense, I suppose, because you always take a few things away, I reckon, from each season, but we've sort of gone with maybe...
You can go back and listen to that episode if you want, but if you're lazy...
don't.
Here's the short run of it.
I wouldn't recommend. But yeah, we sort of simplified it down to 3 main things that we kind of took away from last year. And the first thing I think that you did really well last season that I've still got some work to do is just nailing those undervalued premiums from the start of the year. And I know that I have listened to a couple of podcasts, and I've listened to you. You're a bit of a podcast tour this preseason. I've heard you getting around. So I have listened to a couple of things, and you've talked about maybe the difference between what we would consider an undervalued premium and a mid-pricer.
And a genuine mid-pricer.
I think that's a distinction to make.
Yeah. So I think like last year, the example was... who was that St Kilda goal? I've already forgotten last year.
Boner.
Oh, yeah, Riley Boner.
How could you forget the Boner,
the Boner. Yeah, I think the Boner last year was an example of a genuine mid-pricer.
Yeah.
And nailing him was good. I mean, don't get me wrong; it was a good pick. But
nailing Boner is always good.
Nailing Boner is always very important. It's a life lesson. But I think
we're back, baby.
I think like my season, for example, I never had him the entire season, and I still was okay. I was fine. But nailing players like Max Gawn, even though actually the winner never had Max Gawn last year, so maybe contradictory. But nailing Max Gawn, nailing Isaac Heaney, Lockie Whitfield. Like Matt Crouch, even to a lesser extent, like these players that stayed in your team for at least the first half of the year and were underpriced, I think they're the more important, players to get right. The other guys who are mid-prices, you still have to trade them on.
Yeah.
So they function kind of similar to a rookie in a way, where they're cash generators, and you're still eventually going to have to trade them on. Whereas the underpriced premiums can generate cash, but they also might be captain options. They might be someone you can hold through to the end of the buy rounds before it's luxury trade season.
Yeah, I think that key distinction is the fact that you don't have to worry about when you get off, because you've obviously got a guy that you anticipate is going to stay there for the rest of your season being a premium. And I think we've actually got a few of those guys in the forward line this year, especially given the forward line is a spot where we don't typically expect too much in terms of average. So we've got a few guys there that maybe fit that mold. What was the second takeaway that we took from last season?
Second takeaway was that you got to target the good runs and you got to forgive the poor runs. I think like working backwards from a case of, okay, this guy's scored poorly. Well, has he come up against some really tough teams?
Yeah.
Is he coming into a fixture where he has some good matchups? And understanding that if someone's averaged 80 up until that point, doesn't mean that they're an 80 averaging player. If you expect them to be a 110 averaging guy at the start of the year, they average 80, well, chances are they're about to go on a run that they're going to average 120, 125 if they have a good fixture. So
you got a couple of decent examples of how you did that well last season.
Yeah,
as well.
so like grabbing Bont when I did, I think it was even after the game. I think you got him a couple of weeks earlier. He scored what did he score, a 50 or something like that?
Got him for his big 50, yeah.
Big 50, and like didn't let that dissuade me because I knew he was coming up against Richmond. Nick Dacos was an example. Got on him at the perfect time. Like even someone like he wasn't a premium, but an Alex Sexton, I think I got him in for his 130 that he popped. And then the week later, everyone else is getting on them at that point. But you've got that week ahead where you're, okay, let's look for the next guy. I've banked the cash that they've risen up at that point, and then I could focus on the next two while everyone else is kind of scrounging around to catch up. So it's easier said than done, but I think it is the biggest distinction between getting ahead and chasing tail.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think you're on the money there. And without sort of inflating that head too much, I did hear you say on another podcast that you feel like you're confident with the first part of your season, or picking your initial team. You feel like you're really in a good rhythm with like upgrade season and what works best for you in that period of the season. But the last takeaway from last year is just the fact that you seem to absolutely butcher
I
luxury
shit the
trade
bed.
season.
I straight up shit the bed.
So what are you going to do? I mean, you got to get better.
Well, it'll depend on the cash, but like last year, for example, I think and you were telling me this at the time, so I should listen to you sometimes. But I would have been better off just getting a 23rd, 24th, 25th premium and just keep upgrading my team, keep getting that team value higher. So then I don't have this umming and ahhing that I do all week. The only umming and ahhing I have would be maybe loopholing and things like that, which brings itself a different challenge. But obviously the winner in Chris, he had 24 premiums. The last week he put Bont on the bench and all these sort of things. So I think if we're in that opportunity where we have the cash and funds to do so again this year, I think that's something I will explore a bit more seriously.
I mean, if that's what has got you your success to that point in the season,
why switch it up?
Do you know what I mean?
If it ain't broke, don't fix it, they say.
It's an interesting one.
It's definitely that luxury trading season, I think will be something that I can learn from and try not to overthink it. So that's how I'm going to improve this year. My luxury trading is going to be better. Yeah. I'm going to explore those 23rd, 24th premiums. And especially if they're cheap. Like, for example, like Connor Rosie last year.
Yeah.
When he had his injury, he came in super cheap. I never owned him. And because I was looking for the quote-unquote best. But just because he's cheap doesn't mean he can't match it with the best. And then the money I saved could have been the difference between me getting that 24th premium or not. So those kind of things I think I can improve on this season. And hopefully change this, get rid of this 6. That's terrible. That doesn't work on the camera, but
Who knows?
just leave with the 1. What about you? How can you improve?
Yeah, we kind of snuck into the next segment, our improvement. So, I mean, for me, it's probably more basic stuff. Although I get on and talk a bit of smack with you, I still consider myself pretty fucking like a casual player. Pretty.
Mate, you won the Content Creators Cup, so if you're casual, the rest of the podcast, you're throwing shade.
No, I definitely know I lean on you a fair bit, but I guess that gets me to the point is I just want to get better at like not fucking up loops, making sure that I'm all across.
This is the sweaty part of it, though. You know what I mean? Like this is the part where it's like you got to be switched on all weekend, and if you got an 18-month-old running around, it makes it a little bit harder.
I might just give you the assistant coaching duties, man. I'll give you the keys.
Maybe that's where everyone needs an assistant coach. Like everyone needs
everyone needs a mate that's happy to help.
Yeah, when you're out doing stuff and you've got a mate that's a degenerate at home, like myself.
A degenerate, did you say?
Yeah, get one of those mates, and it will help your season.
The second thing that I want to work on is just planning to trade in players, especially when they're coming into succulent matchup, because
not a good enough reason to use succulent, but okay.
Well, I traded in Luke Ryan last season, and I think I traded him in maybe the week before a succulent matchup, and it was
because you did do the Sheasel trade last year from memory, but you did Sheasel to Green.
Yeah, I pulled the pin.
Memory.
I pulled the pin early, got rid of Sheasel right at the wrong point, got in Luke Ryan at the wrong point. There was just a whole heap of examples.
If you'd flipped them around, if you went Luke Ryan first, Tom Green second, it would have been fine. But you did it in the wrong order. So the matchups, I think,
So I think, and to be perfectly honest, that probably comes down to mapping out the season a little bit before it starts. Because if you're trying to work out those matchups midway through the season, you've already got enough things going on. You kind of, and I know that you can't map the season out in advance because so many different things happen, but just having an idea of when players are going to go into a 3-4 game, succulent stretch and when players are going to go into something a little tougher. So, yeah, maybe a little bit of research on the horizon for me in the next little bit.
Okay, all right. Well, I can't wait to see it, and I can't wait for you to share it with us all. So let's...
You're right. There's no chance of me doing any research.
Let's get rid of 2024. It's gone. It's happened.
Yeah.
The best part about a new fantasy season, Luke, is no one is wrong yet. We're all right. You can't prove to me that I'm wrong. You're not wrong. The listener's not wrong. No one's wrong just yet. We're all correct.
I think I'll still find a way to be wrong.
So let's talk about 2025 and what will be happening. Not too much different. Last year, obviously, we had the big change with the early season buy rounds. They were brand new. This year, we have them back again. They're a little bit different in the fact that we only have 3 early season buys. 1 week in week 3, where 4 teams have the early buy. That's Brisbane, Collingwood, Geelong, and Sydney. Some relevant names, which we'll discuss, I'm sure. As opposed to week 2 and week 4, where there's only the 2, which is what we had last year. Now, because last year was the first year we had the early round buys, what were your takeaways with that? And do you think the same approach works this year? And or what do you do differently for the round 3 matchup specifically?
Yeah, I think that's where there's a slight difference, and I think it's a somewhat relevant difference because based on my takeaways from last year, if we were to just repeat last year again, I think there's an argument to say you don't really have to pay too much mind as long as you pick the players that you would have thought would be the best value players anyway. But I think there's just this little flag that the difference this year when we have 4 teams on 1 round buy, I think we do need to pay just a little bit more attention to that buy round, especially considering there's some relevant names there. So you got Brisbane, Kitty Coleman, you got Geelong, Bailey Smith, and I mean, even if Callum Mills shows us something that we like, Dan Houston for Collingwood, he's obviously a face at a new club. So I just think there's a few relevant names there, and it probably begs the question with 4 teams on the bye, you probably can't afford to be having 4 guys that you consider to be decent level scorers for you all on that bye. So is that a similar way to how you're seeing it early? Or
I think so. The other thing is like for example, last year, like you had the Tom Green question, and I'm going to give you credit because looking back, I swear you were the first person to suggest this strategy, and the winner did this. So
hey, mate.
That's the only difference between you and him.
What? Yeah, correct.
He followed through. You didn't.
Yeah. I mean, what's the saying? Even a broken clock's right twice a day. So
yeah, something like that.
I think that's me on that.
No. But the whole strategy of starting someone like a Tom Green who had the North Melbourne West Coast back-to-back round 1, round 2 matchups.
Yeah.
He went 120 plus, I think, in round 0. So had the cash generation. You trade him at his early buy in round 3. I don't see a team having that we're using succulent a lot. That must be the title of this video. Succulent start to the season. No team has that kind of early season just layup of a matchup twice in a row.
It was pretty unique, wasn't it?
It was pretty unique. So I don't necessarily think that that's a massive go-to strategy this year. But I do think, like, if you're already going to have a Callum Mills, a Kitty Coleman, a Levi Ashcroft, a Bailey Smith, there's 4 players all on the round 3 bye. Now, even though none of them are, like, top dollar guys, well, best 18, you're going from best 22 to best 18, well, there's 4 players already gone. You start to take anyone more than that off, and you're actually adding a rookie on field, even with the best 18 in place. So I think we really don't want any rookies, any premiums on that round 3 bye round, unless you're not going to have one of those 4 players, which I think the argument is tough to mount against most of them. The other 2 bye rounds, I think it's definitely more feasible to do. What I did last year was I had limited myself to 1 premium on the early bye rounds. So I had Lockie Whitfield on the round 3, Isaac Heaney on the round 5, and a Max Gorn on the round 6.
But let's also let's like dig a bit deeper into that, because that's not just I allowed myself to have a premium. All 3 of those guys that you listed were guys guys you consider value. So just don't get the wrong impression that Mitch is saying, just go out and find a premium on that buy. That's fine. You need to make sure that you're still picking your team. Guys that you think are unders.
Yeah, because I mean that's like the basic principle in the first place. Do you know what I mean? Like that doesn't change. But for example, having like a Heaney and a Grundy last year, both could have been considered, value. Trying to maybe pick one or the other, and because we had such good options as the ruck, it was easy to just go Tristan Sherry, even though
we still fucked it up.
Grundy tricked us in the round 0 game. So, so I think all in all, we'll be more prepared for the early round bye this time around. What about the mid-season buys? There's 5 of them now. People were crying out for less buys last year. And the AFL went, have another one.
More is always better. I think, in a lot of ways, it probably makes it easier for us, doesn't it? It's an extra round with an extra trade.
Yeah. You've
got... The buys are spread.
So you've got a round, I think it's the round 13, if I'm not mistaken, where there's 2 teams. Yeah, the round 13 with Freo and St Kilda. You've got 2 teams on the bye, so essentially like an early bye round. Plus you've got the extra trade. And you've got then 4 rounds around that where you've got 3 trades. Like, we're going to be moving a shit ton of our team in that time.
Yeah, definitely. And the buys have always been, I would say, make or break for your season, isn't it? Because if things start to go slightly wrong, they tend to snowball. And if you get it right, your rank tends to go the other way. So do you think that more buy rounds will exacerbate that even more, or do you think it could just kind of level the playing field because it becomes easier?
No, I think the opposite. I think the people who prepare, the people who plan, the sweaties, like the people who are right into it, they'll get the advantage because it might make it easier, but there's still always a way to make yourself even better. Like, if you want to be in a pointy end, you don't just settle for the fact that, I'm not going to have a disaster of a round. There's always a way to do a trade where you trade Zach Butters to an Errol Goulden or something like that, where you're going to get an extra game played, an extra guy with a good matchup.
That sounds like a good trade, mate.
It does sound like a good trade. Don't mind if I do. But yeah, so I think more buy rounds just continues to favour those who are more switched on, in my opinion.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? Do you agree, disagree?
Haven't done enough research into it, mate, so I'll back you.
Well, that's just my own thing. Like that seems to be where I make the most ground. Like each season, even in the seasons where I haven't won a hat, like 2022, I finished the buy rounds at 24th. Lost 100 spots after that. The year after that, I came out of it from 1,000 down to 300 or something like that, and then stalled after that. So it's where I make the most ground. Last season, I finished the buy like 4th. Lost spots. So the more buys they're in, the better it is for me. I reckon.
Want a whole season of buys.
Just give me buys all year.
You're fucking dripping. What's going on with the salary inflation here? Because I checked my pay slip and it hasn't changed. Cost of living's fucked. What's going on here?
Yeah, well, not only is our milk getting more expensive and all our groceries, but
you love a Milo too, mate. You big on the cost of milk.
Absolutely, it's half my expenditure. But yeah, we've got a bigger salary to spend. So what is it, like 17.8 million or something like that? But the magic number has also gone up more proportionally to the money that we have. So
I liked it when you had to earn being $1 million man.
yeah, no, they give them out like hotcakes now.
Yeah, I kind of liked the $1 million man, and there was 2 or 3 of them, and now
there's I think 17 or 18 or something like that.
Riley Bonner's $1 million man, isn't he?
Well, yeah, the boner's always worth $1 million. I'd pay $1 million for boner. But I think
we'll cut that
what
one.
this tells us is that, well, hopefully, last year with the 24, 25 premium sort of thing, maybe we won't see as much of that. However, so it should technically be harder because I think if you break down the magic number, every dollar is like a point, right? Mm-hmm. So with our 17.8 million, we should be not scoring as much in round 1. But because we have such a cheap forward line, and we'll get into that a bit later, I still think it won't be too much of an issue. I think teams will look fairly similar to where they were last year, despite the fact that technically it should be harder. We've got less money this year. The price of the bottom price rookies increased more than everywhere else.
Yeah, you mentioned the forwards, and it's a good segue because I do think we're a little sport for choice. And yeah, keep in mind we are many moons away from the start of the season, but at this stage it seems that we're sport for choice in the forward line. Are they picking themselves, Mitch, in terms of team structure?
I think they are. I think there's 4 players, right? And it's not a secret who they are. They're some of the most popular players in the game. Jack McRae, Philippou, Bailey Smith, and Caleb Daniel are some of the most popular players in the game. They all seem like gimme picks. So does this mean that all our teams are going to be vanilla this year, Luke? I mean, at least in the forward line, I think it will be.
Yeah, I mean, it's flipped on its head at the other end of the ground, which we'll talk about in a second. So I don't think all teams will be vanilla.
Yeah.
Maybe. You get that, but in lines every year, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, 2 years ago, we were all talking about the same forwards, just they were all probably undervalued premiums, upper echelon guys. So, I think there's always a way to find that, that point of difference.
The lowest ownership of those 4 players is Philippou, who's at 49%.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So
that's crazy.
You got Jack McRae, who's 55%. Yeah. Bailey Smith, the highest owned player, at 69%. Caleb Daniel, the second highest, at 62%. So, it is going to be vanilla. I still think that there's a world where someone like Jack McRae is a flop. So, do your research. I still think he's in my team though. Like, I think even if it doesn't work out as well as you want it to, he's still going to be a solid pick. Like, it's
You're
not
like a bison safety in numbers type operation.
Yeah, just follow the herd.
Yeah. You won't get picked off by a line, mate.
Okay. Jared line. But I think that's where the uniqueness, or that's where the vanilla kind of ends, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a lot of other lines where there's a decent discussion on what's going on. The midfield, for example, I think there are so many mids that are underpriced.
Yeah.
Only one midfielder was 110 last year, and that was Adam Schlaw. And I'm sure no one's picking Adam Schlaw to start the season. Do you see the midfield as a place where you can maybe get a leg up on most
definitely.
teams?
I mean, the battle then is, when you've got so many options, is picking the right ones, isn't it? So you've got guys like Clayton Oliver, who I think we all think is just grossly undervalued, and we're hoping he can return to his best. But then you've got guys like Tim Taranto, who are going to be the highest performing midfielders in a shit team, and I've heard his market share discussed, and just whether Richmond are going to score enough points as a team for him to be a viable pick. Connor Rozee is a guy who was sort of injury hampered at different stages through last season, and then you've got guys on the other end of the spectrum who we know are guns like Andrew Brayshaw, but then there's just discussions about how many points can go around in that Freo midfield and whether he can be the guy that we know he can be. So I think there's a lot of storylines going on in the midfield, and there's a lot of different ways you can go. Yeah,
for sure. And the rucks, I think, is also a line that will define a lot of people's seasons. I had a chat with Holmesy the other day, and he's the man that usually champions set and forget, which is a famous strategy that has won cars in the past, has won hats in the past, and it seems to be the popular strategy returning this way. Now, little tidbit from that interview.
Please.
The set and forget man himself, Holmesy, he's not structured up for a set and forget this year. So do you think, especially with the cheap forward line, do you think that teams that just have money left over, that setting and forgetting your rucks is the way to go this year? December 30th. What's your take? Set and forget, or go cheap and weep, or
Nice, man.
I'm trying to rhyme it, but
Let's warm up.
cheap and yeah. Anyway, what's your thoughts?
I mean, I feel like we have to lead with this every time we say something, but there's so many months before the season. So if you see something from Tom de Koning and you hear things out of Carlton that maybe they're favouring going with a single ruck strategy and he's the man, then to me, you look at that and go, hey, there's value there. If that doesn't happen, then, do you look at a guy like, Jordan Sweet's still... Sweety's still pretty cheap. Does he get to just take over the solo ruck, and can he, show us some scoring that he showed us in patches last year? So a lot of water to go under the bridge. But if the value options are there and they're showing themselves to be like pretty solid in terms of their role, I think I would favour that and try to make the most of my money elsewhere than I would pay up for. Because the guys you're talking about, like let's talk about it. Rowan Marshall is the guy that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And once you get into Rowan Marshall, Sherry, Gawn, English, wasn't red hot last year.
Yeah.
You're talking about a lot of cash. So if there's a guy that we think can perform in line with those guys that is like supreme value, then I think I would be inclined to go that way.
Well, let's talk about the advantages or why you would go set and forget. So going set and forget, obviously, as in the name, you don't have to worry about it for the entire season. You get two players in that position, different to the other positions where you've got 6 or 8. So there's limited room for you to fuck it up, really.
We have so many trades.
We have so many trades. That is true. But these guys also will be... A lot of people would argue that like rucks are a little bit more consistent season over season.
Yep.
For example, Rowan Marshall was second last year. Second the year before, and first last year. He sort of backed up a very similar kind of average. Max Gawn has done that in the past. Brodie Grundy went back-to-back 120-plus seasons in a row.
Yep.
I would argue, look at Tim English. Look at some of these guys that have a drop-off. Now, Tim English, I think, is a rare example because most of the drop-offs usually come when there's like a second ruck or a change in a game style or something that comes around. But there was a rule change for Tim English. There's no rule change this season. So a betting man would say that it's pretty unlikely that they would have a dramatic fall-off. And in the ruck, if you have a mid-price ruck, the options are not as plentiful. So there's not as many parachute options for you to jump off to, which is, I guess...
Pivotability.
You can't pivot as freely in the ruck line as you can in the other lines because chances are there's another option in the midfield that you could just jump across to. Whereas in the ruck, there usually isn't as many options. So I think that is probably the major downfall of the value ruck option.
Yeah.
However, I agree with you that you don't want to limit yourself because I reckon if you pay up for the 2 top rucks and there is an option that becomes available, psychologically, it's very difficult to make that trade down to that guy instead of making the jump across or up.
Yep.
Just from like putting a mental barrier in front of yourself. What are your thoughts on that?
What's Tom de Koning's price at? Let's just use him as the main example that a few people are floating.
Top of my head, in fact, on the spreadsheet in front of me, he is priced at where is he? He's priced at 87.5. So high 80s.
Yeah.
So, look, it's not a world away from getting to... it's 300,000 away from Rowan Marshall. It's a hefty price.
And like you said, the way teams are structuring up with the way the forward line is, I think there's a few people out there that are going like, oh, kind of got the cash. Should I just go there? It's like it's the opportunity cost, isn't it, when you go...
Could you get a rookie off the field?
Exactly. And it's hard to see a kid as talented as de Koning, if he is that solo ruck and if he is healthy, there's not many solo rucks in the league that are as talented as him that don't go 105 plus.
And you just leave yourself room for the not expecting, but what if he is the Tristan Sherry? No one expects Tristan Sherry to be what he was, but by going that cheaper value option, it leaves you the possibility that does happen, which can be the ticket for you to catapult up the rank, especially if they're more unique than what Tristan Sherry was. If Tristan Sherry was like a more unique player last year, those who did start him would have just absolutely killed the season. But obviously he was very popular.
Before we get too bogged down, defenders, our last sort of structure talk.
All the talk is that it's hard to pick defenders this year. Have you found that?
There's a lot of guys that I look at and I feel like you're priced at what I expect you to do. And that by definition, I think can make it hard
good
because you want to try and find value. So, all I'm doing really is echoing a lot of what I've already heard out there on various podcasts. So, it's just going to be about sort of finding, as the preseason evolves, finding out some roles for players like Jaden Shorts and Callum Mills, Kitty Coleman, how they're going to go about things. Can they be value prospects? But I can't really find too many that are in that category where I go, you're an underpriced premium that I feel super confident you're going to stay in my team.
Yeah, I do think that's where a lot of people are getting stuck on in terms of like the top 10 to 15 guys. You can't really see too much value. Like, you go down the list in terms of, like, Harry Sheasel, he had a role change. You go through Lockie Whitfield, he's never gone as high as he did last year. Zorko, he's a million years old.
Start him.
Sam Flanders, role change. Nick Martin, role change. Nick Newman, you got Doherty coming back into the side. Luke Ryan, he's
not
a
touching
seagull.
with a 10-foot pole. Fuck me.
Jack Sinclair, you've got several new midfielders in that team. Nazai Wanganeen-Miller, he's never been up that high. What's changed for him? Jordan Clark, Max Holmes, Dan Houston has an early buy.
Dan Houston's the first guy you get. It has an early buy, but he's the first guy that you get to where you actually think, okay, there's a new club. Could he be a little bit more consistent than he's previously been at Port Adelaide? Because Port Adelaide, potentially played a different game style. But
I've gone through like 10 names there, and so you go, okay, can Dan Houston be a top 6? Don't know, sure. I think that is overplayed. I think that worrying about whether someone's a top 6 or a top 8 or whatever it is, I don't think we need to get bogged down in that personally.
Just value.
I think if there's value, it's fine. And that's why I think it is fine to be looking at those guys in the 900,000s, not the guys in the millions, because I rattled off all the $1 million defenders there, and I don't think any of them have upside in terms of their price.
The only thing that I can foresee you getting yourself in a little bit of a pickle with is if it comes to round 0, round 1, and you have a heap of these kind of cheaper guys that you're just hoping on a little bit. Maybe it's Houston, maybe it's a Bailey Dale, maybe it's a Liam Duggan. And you come out of that round going, holy fuck, none of these guys did what I thought. And you're just in a very much a position where you're just scrambling to try and plug holes in the boat.
Well, I think as we learned last year with that round 0, if you start with a shit round 0 score, your price is going to go south pretty quick. Like Errol Goulden, I think, was one of those options. Say you're like a James Sicily, for example, is an option that has an early buy round. If he comes out and wets the bed in that first round 0 game, well, it's going to put a lot of people off.
Shits the bed, wets the bed. I like
it. That's obviously always a caveat, but I do think we shouldn't have to feel like we have to have $1 million defender in our backline just to have an option that we feel is the top 6. I think that's a bit sort of old school thinking, in my opinion. But yeah, we'll see how it all goes down. Maybe there is a bit of value in those guys, and we'll find out later.
Well, we're previewing the upcoming season, and a big part of any upcoming season is players who have moved clubs. I think it's always a huge talking point.
This is a real thing in terms of the new club bump, right?
Oh, but you think about the reason why several reasons why players might move clubs, but for a lot of them, it's that they maybe don't fit into the existing system at their previous club, and they're looking to go to the new club to fill a hole that team needs, and often that might coincide with a role that we like as well.
Yeah, 100%.
So we've got a couple of players here. You want to list off a couple?
You read them off to me. Let me know.
Well, I mean, Baz is a consensus pick, Bailey Smith. It's hard to see him not being value, and I think it's just one that you just put in and forget it.
I don't love picking Geelong players because of how they are as a team and how secretive they are, and they rest their players, but it's his price.
Yeah.
He's priced at 57.
Yeah.
I picked him when he was priced at 105 a couple of seasons ago.
That
shows you what I think of the guy.
Too, I think.
Yeah. So I think he's a pretty easy one.
McRae, to me, is an easy one because so many other people will pick him. Unless anything changes between, God forbid something changes between now and the season start. It could never happen. No. But so many other people will pick him that you may as well jump on for a free swing as well. Because if it goes to shit, you can jump off with every other person in the comp. Are you considering going against, maybe?
Well, I don't think he's as locked as the other 3 forwards. I still think I'll likely go there. He went to the perfect spot.
Yeah.
Like St Kilda's midfield sucked last year. It's one of the weaker midfields in the competition. If he went to many other midfields in the comp, I think he wouldn't be as nearly a lock in the team. But if you're going to St Kilda, where like who were their midfielders? Like Windhager was like the second highest CBA mid last year. It was Jack Steele and no one else.
Poor Windhager, don't knock him.
So I think it's the perfect position for him to be in. Bailey Smith probably the same thing in terms of like Geelong's midfield is nothing to write home about. So the team that they landed in, I think, is a big reason as to why he's so popular, because he has that legitimate opportunity to get that inside mid role, which is obviously we know he can score. But he is still approaching 30. He has, like, I know everyone gets on bloody Bevo, but McRae's not been good. Like he's moved out of the midfield, I think, for a reason, not just because Bevo's a wild man.
We'll see. Proof will be in the pudding. What about Matty Kennedy's move to the Bulldogs?
Yeah, so he's gone to the Bulldogs, right?
Correct.
Okay, so he's gone from one place where he's been moved all around the place to another place where he's going to be moved all around the place.
A place where you're like, can you see him getting a regular midfield
see
spot there? No, me neither. But he does fall into that bracket of slightly cheaper forwards as well. So they'll play. Will they play round zero?
No.
They won't,
Bulldogs do not
they
play
don't have
round
the early
zero.
buy. So, yeah, one that you'd have to pull the trigger on without any seeing. Houston, we mentioned before. So
Houston, I find one of the more interesting players.
Only
this
because
season.
the line is in this season, but you're right in saying
there's something about Houston. Like the knock on Houston has been he's a roller coaster, right?
Houston, we have a problem.
We have had problems in the past. He has really low floors.
Yeah.
But the man has a ceiling.
He has, there's no doubt.
He has a ceiling and
Space levels.
Yeah,
might say.
Yeah, and no gravity where he's going. That was terrible. So
we might just cut this one and just come back. We'll work on a little bit.
Take a few pods to warm up, I reckon.
Better gear if we'll come back.
But so Collingwood are not known for being a fantasy scoring team anyway. But is it a case of like the Taranto at Richmond kind of thing? Is it the cattle that they've had or the system?
Let's
Which
think.
I think is an interesting discussion.
For periods in the last 2 years, we saw Nick Dacos play the friendliest halfback role that Collingwood was ever going to give anyone, wasn't it? So like he was
year before, you mean? Yeah.
Year before, yeah. So in the last couple of seasons, so every single time they had an opportunity to give the ball to Dacos, they did. And what did he average in that role? It was still pretty impressive.
It was like 108, I want to say.
They're not going to do that with Houston. But do you expect that that's effectively he's going to be a halfbacker? And I don't know. What would he need to score to be a guy that you'd be all over like a rash?
Is Dan Houston? So he's priced at 94. So it's that awkward sort of zone. You'd want him to be going 100 plus, I think, to be worth the pick. I think that's a possibility. I also think it's a possibility he actually regresses and becomes like a high 80s guy.
Yeah.
So I think it could go either way. And the fact that he has that buy round on that round 3 is definitely something that I think knocks him down.
Let's play an early game of buy round roulette. What does he have to...
What's his score to be in our team?
If he goes 110 in opening round, you probably... With the fact that we're bereft of defenders a little bit.
It would have to depend on what the others do. Like, if Callum Mills kills it, if Kitty Coleman kills it, if, like, Bailey Smith is the lock that we think he is, like, Levi Ashcroft looks like the must-have cash cow, I don't think I can fit him in. I don't think I can fit him in with those 4 players putting their hands up. If one of those guys doesn't put their hand up, then I think it's a conversation. But I'd be hard to have more than 4 players on that round 3. And Dan Houston would be the first to go, I think.
What the fuck am I doing playing opening round roulette on the 30th of December?
Hey, it's a fun game.
I feel dirty.
But I think he's one to watch, especially in draft. I think actually he's going to be a very interesting draft option. Now, I want to get your take on this because I think we have differing opinions on this guy.
We do, a little bit.
Liam Baker.
Yeah.
The consensus on this podcast, we fucking love Liam Baker.
Yeah, don't get it twisted.
We love him. He's an awesome player. I'm sad to see him leave Richmond. Of any player that we lost this season, I think he is the most hurtful for Richmond.
Yeah.
I don't think he's a fantasy player. Do you?
I think he's capable of being a fantasy player. He wasn't a fantasy player in a Richmond team competing for premierships because none of the players at Richmond were fantasy players.
Yeah.
They were exactly what Liam Baker is. They played their role. But I have this kind of like little thing in the back of my head that if he wants to and in the right role at West Coast, could he go and just say, I'm going to go run around and I'm going to get 30?
What role is that? do you think? Like, is he better suited to a midfield role, a half-back role?
I think it could probably be a combination of both. But when you go to... He's going to go to West Coast, and to a lesser extent, because they're starting to build, I think, a nice enough list. They've got a few guys that put their hands up.
Yep.
But he's going to go and he's going to be like, what is he? Is he a 3-time premiership player? Or is
I
he
believe
just
so.
Yeah.
I believe he's all 3, yeah.
So he's going to go there and go, hey, boys, I'm here.
I've got some danglies. Listen to me.
I'd imagine that a few guys are going to defer to him, and that he's going to go in as one of those like senior players that's going to kind of drive them where they need to go. Could that coincide with him getting a bit more of the pill, playing a more significant role fantasy-wise? He's still pretty expensive compared to some of those
other... Price at 78.
I mean, compared to some of those other options that we've got to play with. But he is a guy that has floated around F1 for me at the moment. What's your other side of the...
Well, I just haven't seen a prolonged enough period to say that I think that he's a guy that could average 90 plus.
Yeah.
And I think that's what he would need to do to be worth the selection.
His low game, would you agree in saying that in any of his games where he showed a flaw when he was at Richmond, it was obvious to us that he was playing a very specific role for the team?
Yes.
It was never like, oh, he's in this waxy half-back role and he's dropped to 40. It was like, oh, he's running with this guy, or he's playing a high half-forward role that we know can be not fruitful. Like,
I think that there's been some games where he scored well, but I think even in some of those cushy roles, there's some games he doesn't score well. So the stats I've got here is that in the last 2 seasons, he's played 25 games off half-back. Okay, now some of them a bit more defensive-minded, but he's only averaged 76.5 points in those games. So that's not including any of the half-forward games, which was a lot more last year. Last year, he played a lot more half-forward. When he's played in the midfield, where his CBAs were high, which is 10 games over the last 2 or 3 seasons, he's averaged 82.6, which is better, and it's higher than his price, but only priced like 5 points more. And that's on 81% time on ground. Now, it's a low sample size in terms of like the 10-game period, but I think it's less likely he walks in as a midfielder at West Coast. I think it's more likely he's a defender. I just don't see him being that seagully kind of type.
It's probably not in his nature. That's probably a fair call that you make.
Maybe it increases a little bit. I'm not willing to wager that it's enough to pick him. But that's just my...
Yeah.
I don't have any evidence to suggest he can do it.
It'll be an interesting one to follow.
I like to go off stuff that's been there, not like a gut feel.
Well, it'll be an interesting one to follow, and I think the reason it'll be interesting is because of the other options that come into that discussion, because I don't know how...
We've got 4 locks, but then the F1 decision is actually not that straightforward.
And so I think that's why, it's an interesting watch. Caleb Daniel obviously moved to a new club. I think he'll suit the stripes, mate. That's what they say, isn't it? It's like...
Makes you, I thought it made you look skinny. I thought that was the stripes. The vertical
stripes.
Really? Horizontal make you look a bit chunkier.
No, but taller is what I think he needs.
Maybe, yeah.
Caleb would be pumped to be in the vertical.
He just needs some lifts in his
Imagine
shoes.
if he went to the hoops, to Geelong, he would barely be able to see him on the ground. But
he wouldn't be able to fit in Geelong because he covers his hair. In Geelong, you got to have that blonde hair.
Luscious. So I think the vertical stripes there will work well for Caleb. But he and
Tristan Sherry can headbutt each other all day long because got the 2 helmets.
Caleb would have to jump. I reckon pretty high. Get up there.
Sherry has to get down. But the double helmet over there, I think will be good. Shay, this is interesting.
Yeah,
I think there's something here.
Nah, there's nothing.
He did not give a fuck last year, did he? Like he just walked out into the field and he played footy, but
no, but I think that's just not in his. It's not. Don't get this wrong. It's not in his nature to not give a fuck. But I think his the way he comes across on the field, he's relaxed. He's
he thrives on a team that's successful.
Yeah, he's the opposite of Liam Baker. Like when you look at Liam Baker, you think that guy's trying hard, and even when Shay's trying hard, it doesn't perhaps look that way sometimes. But the reason that this to me is a non-event is because people that are picking Bolton would be picking Bolton on the basis that he's going to see more time in the midfield. But the way I read it is like he's not going to Freo to spend more time in the midfield. Freo need exciting, damaging forward options, and Freo have one of the best midfields in the comp, in my 100%. Opinion. So I just can't see this one being a thing. Yes, the ball's going to spend more time in the forward line, but Bolton to me is always just going to be that impact player. He'll give you the occasional 120, but he'll give you plenty of 60s.
He is priced fairly cheaply, however, I will say, as a candidate. He's priced at 73, so 5 points less than someone like a Liam Baker. I think there's every chance that he outscores a Liam Baker. He's averaged mid to high 80s in the past, Now, that was when Richmond was a bit more up and about.
There's every chance we could see Liam Baker playing on him in a derby.
That'd actually be pretty
Good.
interesting.
Yeah.
But I think there's more upside with O'Shea than there is a Liam Baker. However, I still am skeptical, like you. So
Has Cumming got you excited, mate?
Cumming was in. I'm always excited about Cumming, but the player is someone that I started with. Fumbled. He's a player I started with in the first iteration of my team. Upon doing research,
Cumming was going.
Cumming's gone, and I'm a little bit less excited.
Okay.
So this could be ironically my boner of 2025.
He could be.
Both having, ejaculation associated names. So
the stars are there to align.
Maybe I'm just a prude. I don't know. I just hate these, these filthy jokes. I'm just a librarian, just like can't do it. But I can see myself fading Isaac Cumming this season. I'm yet to be convinced. I'm open to coming around onto it. Joke intended.
No, it wasn't.
But at this stage, I'm out. What are your thoughts?
Well, do you want to talk both of the new Crows?
Yeah, let's talk at Pete Ling as well.
Yeah,
because he's who I went to.
Yeah. Okay. Look, I think it's always interesting when players go to a new club because you can't just assume that what the role that they were playing at the previous club is necessarily what the new club has in mind for them as well. So you kind of do have to watch the preseason to see that. But if potentially Adelaide saw what Pete Ling was sort of able to do in those last few rounds of the season, aside from the absolute stinker that he dropped for you, if they've got that role earmarked for him, then that could potentially...
He'll score well, yeah.
He will, yeah. And so I think that of the two, he's the guy that in the role that I might expect will score better.
I think... Yeah, Adelaide's fascinating. Like, they have so many moving pieces. There's the talk about, does Rory Laird go to half-back? Yeah. And if he goes to half-back, is there enough ball for Cumming to get? Like, I don't think Isaac Cumming's necessarily locked in a half-back role. I think there's very real possibility that he's going to be a winger.
Yeah.
They've got Lockie Scholl there, but their other wing position is by no means locked in.
Yeah.
You still got Hinge there. You've got potentially Rory Laird there on the half-back line. So Isaac Cummings by no means locked into that halfback role, first and foremost. He did his 90-plus average with market share on the kick-ins at GWS. So I have some serious doubt whether he's going to walk in there and just say, hey, boys, don't worry, I'm here. Rory Laird, you're an All-Australian halfback in the past. Don't worry about it. I'm here. And takes all the kick-ins. Pete Ling as well. You've got so many options that can run through that midfield. You've got, obviously, Jordan Dawson. Yeah. You've got Saliga, who emerged last year. Does Rory Laird move back, or is he still there? What are they doing with Crouch?
Lairdy, Rankin will get a bit of a go in there.
All these players there. So
even did Rochelle get little patches in there last year? Or
he's an outside chance, but maybe he shows something.
There's a lot to...
So there's a lot to go on.
Jordan Dawson's a full forward now, mate, isn't he?
Yeah, apparently. So it's a big watch. I think that Pete Ling's got a high ceiling. They're both mids at the moment. If Cumming gets the halfback role, he'll be a defender eventually. I still don't see him being a keeper or a premium. So these are both genuine mid prices.
Yeah, for sure.
So I don't necessarily think the position matters too much. It's just basically how much more can they score from their price. But yeah, big watch on those Adelaide boys, I think.
That's kind of a few of the main names that have moved clubs as well. So, just to put them out there and have a little bit of discussion early days.
Absolutely.
What are your goals for 2025, mate? Just
I've seen your goal here. I'm not going to go as lofty as you, but I want to get another one of these. Now I fulfilled a goal of mine on getting on the Holmesy files. But
yeah, congrats, mate. That's good. That was good. I enjoyed listening to that.
Thank you. Because there's some big names on that.
No, I did. I actually did.
There's some big names been on that podcast. Some of which have got multiple hats, and that's my goal, is to enter my name into that realm, to be a hat collector.
Oi.
Move from hat winner to hat collector. That's my goal for 2025.
Well, mate, I can tell you with my goal won't fit in the podcast room. I tell you that for free. You put your two hats on the shelf, but mine is going to be parked right out there.
All right, he's aiming high.
Skirt. I've even got a little car emoji here in the run sheet, mate.
That's when know you're serious.
Hey, if you don't set that as your goal every year, there's something wrong with you.
Aim for the, what is it? aim for the moon, and if you don't make it, land on the stars, which doesn't make any sense. The moon's the closest one. But
You've nailed the quote, I'm sure of it. I'm sure you haven't butchered it.
Yeah, I'm sure that was it. But yeah, aim high is your take here. Now, if you want to just line up a little bit of a sound music, because to finish the podcast,
Do you think we should play it this early?
Yeah,
it's not even
absolutely.
2025 yet.
No, we'll do it. We'll get the thing going.
Okay.
We got some spicy takes.
Sorry, I don't have the maracas.
Yeah, where are the maracas?
I was a
Luke?
good dad, and I took them next door for my daughter to play with. So
No, keep the toys in the podcast room. That's what I say. Sorry, Kens. But we're going to go a bit of rapid fire style. Some early spicy takes.
a lot of these are not spicy. I don't know why we've put the graphic up there, but
well, you can make them spicy if
this
you want
top
them
one's
to.
this top one's not spicy. This is
Okay.
laid-
This is as
laid
spicy as
out.
it comes. All right. The first question for early spicy takes 2025. Who wins the Content
Me.
Creators Cup?
Me. I'm going back to back, baby.
Well, a
Is it
spicy
overall
take
points
would be-
or is
a
it-
spicy take at this stage would be anyone not sitting in this room because 100% success rate, right?
Head wobble. Nah, look,
Back to back, you reckon?
nah, certainly not. I always go Bales. I love the guy, and I always say it, but I will continue to say it. Hardest working bloke in fantasy. That I'm complaining about. You've dragged me in here kicking and screaming. It's
Mate,
30th
you're
of
lucky I'm
December.
not Bales. He would have got you in a month ago.
Bales has been working for months, and not only that, but he didn't stop. He kept doing AFLW. So if you haven't checked out Bales,
He was in America doing content. So
fuck, that guy's committed.
if I'm out of Australia, you better believe I'm not doing any content.
So I'm going to revise my pick. I'm going to pretend I'm not arrogant, and I'll say Bales.
All right. Well, I'm gonna continue the good love to other podcasts, and maybe this is recency bias because I just talked to the man, but I think that Holmesy is having a bounce back season.
Holmesy has had some horrible luck in the past couple of seasons too.
He's had some bad luck. I think, what was it? Did he trade out Ron Marshall for Sweet last year? Was he in that group?
I reckon if you go back through the last couple of years, there's been a few unlucky things for Holmesy, so I'll back the bounce back as well.
He's still a smart guy. As he likes to say, he's a 2-time top 10 hat winner.
You can't say that, mate.
I cannot say that. So I think the money should be on him. So that's going to be my pick for who wins the Content Creators Cup. And I definitely not picking myself because I'm not bringing the Moz this early.
The
let's-
Moz.
Let's talk about
It's been a while.
some players. Who is going to be the highest averaging player in 2025? I see you've just changed your pick to make it a bit more spicy.
Yeah, I changed it. We put the spicy taste graphic up, so I'm gonna back.
I like it.
I'm gonna back Andy Brayshaw for not a bounce back because he's still a gun, but he just showed that in the second half of the year he still got it.
Yeah.
He was a little hampered, let's say, in the first half of the year.
Well, he was playing out in the wing for some reason.
And I know that it perhaps I'm contradicting myself when I talked about just there's so many great guys there in the midfield, but he sees pill, he gets pill,
He does.
he
He's
pops out to space.
Observably thirsty.
Yeah, so you know always back thirst.
Yeah. Always back thirst. Shout out to Doss. My player is not necessarily spicy. However, let's say this: Tristan Sherry, after this season, will have the record for the highest averaging ruckman of all time. He's going to break Brodie Grundy's record.
This could be fucking nuts.
He could be crazy.
The way he cuddled.
A lot of people are saying that
Last year.
it's like an anomalous amount of tackles.
A what?
Anomalous? As in,
Is that a word?
It's not repeatable. I disagree. I think that this man can tackle the exact same way this season.
Oh, like an anomaly.
Yeah, I don't.
Is anomalous a word, but?
Well, it is now. I've made it.
Yeah, nice.
TM. I think that the tackles are not the part that I'm worried about. The part that I'm worried about is there going to be as many stoppages at North Melbourne?
Bro, the tackles are repeatable when you hit it at your feet and there's a bloke standing there and you just...
100%. And I don't see why he would do something different. Was he All-Australian? Did he get... I think he was in the All-Australian team.
If he wasn't.
If he wasn't, it's an outrage. But he...
All-Australian fantasy team for sure.
Yeah, 100%. He finished the season really, really strong. Correlating with his second half of the season was North Melbourne's increase in ruck contests. Now, a lot of that might have been due towards the matchups they had at the end of the year, but I do think there was a concerted effort for North Melbourne to play a more contested style game, and they were getting praise for it from actual AFL media, not just us AFL Fantasy nuffies, saying that it looked better when they played a more contested game. They were doing well in that contested style game, and I think Tristan Sherry is going to benefit a lot from that. So I think if he does win the AFL Fantasy Award, he will do so in spectacular fashion. The traders are probably going to name him a pig, and he's going to go 120 plus.
Fuck yeah.
So that's my spicy take for the highest averaging player for 2025. What about a breakout? Give me your breakout here. You've got a guy that I definitely agree with.
I'm big on the poo.
The Poosis.
You know I'm a huge fan of the poo, and I think Philippoussis is going to have a huge year. I think that he's set in that new role, and like you said, they've maybe made some acquisitions over at St Kilda.
I don't think it affects him.
I don't think so. I think that what he showed in the back half of last year is that he's going to be in that role, and he is going to remain in our teams all year, barring injury.
I think so too. We were happy last year. Not happy because he got injured. I think he was sick for maybe a game or something like that. But he stayed cheaper because he missed those last few games of the season. Had he kept going and did his thing, he would have been more expensive, but we still would have picked him, I think. Yeah. Because I think
there would have been some
there were some good junior numbers there.
Yeah.
It looked, he passed the eye test. I agree. My fantasy breakout for 2025, last year I picked Tristan Sherry, and that obviously was correct. I'm going to go back to the Ruckwell, and I'm going to pick Tom DeConing, TDK. I think is set for a monster season.
Yep.
I think Mr. Worldwide is going to be a thing of the past after this year. He's going to go by the way of Todd Goldstein. And,
poor Toddy.
And I think Tom DeConing is going to make the role his. And I think Carlton going to be the better for it.
The stat that you brought up about wins and losses with and without is
9-1.
It's pretty damning.
9-1. They were with him as
you can't tell me
ruck.
that there's no one at Carlton that's aware of that stat.
And it makes sense. I mean, they've got two great forwards, two big key forwards.
The teams that they played, did you look too much into that? I mean, I can't remember. It's such a large
they had some big
sample
wins.
You'd have to think they played some good
teams. I think the team
that
they lost to, the only loss was GWS. I do remember that. So it's like, you lost to the Giants. They're a good side. And then, every other game they won. Yeah. So I think that, it makes sense. As long as he's healthy, I think he's going to be that solo ruck. They don't need a second ruck, in my opinion. Harry Mackay is a very capable chop-out ruckman. So I don't think it makes much sense to have two rucks going there. So he, to me, is the breakout player for 2025. What about the other end? The biggest fantasy disappointment now. What have you written here, Luke?
Oh, I hate to say it, mate, but you've been up for so long. It's time to come down, crash and burn.
You're writing me off.
I mean, to be fair, anything's going to be a disappointment compared to what I'm going to do this year. So, 2's a disappointment compared to 1, isn't it? So
fair enough. It's
could
twice
still
as
work
bad.
well for you, mate. So I'm backing it in that with my rise, my ascension to the crown, there'll be a little bit of disappointment for 1M Casey. And you've been up and about. You've been bragging. So
okay.
you chew to crash it.
You just knock me down a peg.
I get the feeling I'm not going to get any help with my team anymore, ever.
0.
Who's your disappointment?
My disappointment, I think this is pretty spicy because of how popular he is, but I think Jack McRae, the frustrations...
Interesting for a guy that's currently in your team.
He's in my team. But I think the frustrations about Jack McRae are not going to be limited to Bevo. I think we're going to discover that Jack McRae is just a frustrating player to have in our fantasy team. Now, you can't be disappointing if everyone expects you to be shit. So, hence why you've picked me. Makes sense. Everyone expects me to be good. And everyone expects Jack McRae to be good. And I think there's just a lot of room for disappointment. So
hard for him to go from what he was to so quickly to what we currently have seen from him.
Yeah.
Or recently have seen, I suppose.
Sometimes you just get bad real quick. And it could be the case here. Now,
who
might be good. Who wins the flag?
For you. You go first.
Well, mine's pretty spicy. Yeah, I've just seen yours. You've changed that from last time. My spicy take, I think Carlton has a very real chance to win the flag. This kind of ties into my Tom DeConing take. They were 9-1 with him as a solo ruck. They've got all the pieces there. They've got a good midfield. They've got a good defence. They've got a good forward line. I think their coach is good as well. They just got to put it together. They've got to have some healthy players. And they just got to play the right way. I think Carlton can go from, what were they, 8th last year? They just scraped in that last game of the round to winning the big dance. Yeah, so nice. That's my hot take, Carlton for the flag. Now, yours is just ridiculous.
The Tigers, mate.
The Tigers.
If you don't back your own team at the start of the year, then you're not a true fan.
What are you doing?
So, Richmond.
I guess I'm not a true fan then, because if we win a game, if we win one game, that's a...
Mate,
I'll be surprised.
I'm taking your membership off you. You're not
lucky I don't have one.
You're not a true fan. The Tigers.
Yeah.
to be wearing danglies at the end.
That's
We got to wrap this up.
That's Mars level spicy.
This was meant to be a little intro podcast, and we've gone for an hour.
All right, bold call for the year, just something generic. My bold call is that the midfielders regain top dog position, and no defenders average. Well, that should be 100.
Oh.
No defenders average 110 plus, and more than 4 midfielders go 110 plus. A flip of this past season where we had 3 defenders and 1 mid.
I'll get on board with the second half, but there's got to be a defender that averages 110 plus.
I don't think anyone does.
Okay.
That's my spicy take.
It's the bold call, isn't it? And
it.
mine is that if Bailey Smith can keep
This is
his...
spicy. I like it, but it is spicy.
If Bailey Smith can keep his nose clean, literally and metaphorically,
Yep.
then he could be a top 5 scorer. It's a bold call.
Of the whole game.
Correct.
The whole game, top 5 scorer.
Hey, there was a little patch a couple of years ago.
I picked him
2
when
years
he
ago,
was
3 years ago.
105, and I had him as a top 5 scorer that season. I was wrong.
There was a little
wrong.
patch where he went nuts. I mean, the team he plays for now maybe doesn't lend itself to that, but it's a bold call for a reason.
But he also might play 80% CBAs.
You don't know. He
hasn't done that before.
I mean, he could be the number one
I
guy.
like it. I like it as a bold call. Drop your bold calls, your spicy takes in the comment section below if you're over on YouTube. And if you are not on YouTube, head on over there. Hit that big old subscribe button. We are going to have lots of podcasts coming your way. Horde enforced these next few weeks.
Speaking of Horde enforced.
Yes. Speaking of hard
3 for 33 at lunch.
Oh, okay.
Horde enforced at the batsman.
So, yes, make sure you like and subscribe. If you are a draft fan, we will be doing some more draft content this season. Might be a little bit more of yours truly for those podcasts, but one of the next podcasts coming up will be a top 10 or maybe top 20 draft rankings, and we will be a bit more involved in that this season, so make sure you tune into that. But as always, we will have the classic content coming your way. Next week we'll be starting our positional previews, starting with the difficult to predict defenders, the premiums, the mid prices, so on and so forth. So yeah, make sure you get along and subscribe, rate us on Apple Podcasts, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye.